Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest Lunchtime Bites webinar from the ICBE Business Excellence SkillNet. Today our presenter is Fiona Buckley, covering the topic of how to win your day when working from home. Fiona is a work behaviourist, empowerment coach, and virtual working guru. Fiona also completed a 20,000 word thesis on this subject and has worked in a virtual organisation herself for many years, so has plenty of practice and experience in working from home. Over the course of 20 minutes, Fiona will share insights, tips, and approaches from how to motivate yourself, understanding your personality type and the impact, through to tips for working more productively. The ground rules for today: Fiona will present for approximately 20 minutes, followed by a 10-minute Q&A. Everybody is muted on the call, but we encourage you to submit questions or comments via the chat function. If you hover over the screen, you should see that function, the chat function, pop up on the top or the bottom of your screen. I'm going to further delay and hand you over to Fiona.
Thank you, Owen. So I have 20 minutes, so I'm going to try and condense as many practical tips as I can in that time frame, and then, as Owen said, we'll open it up to Q&A. So first things first, as Owen said, I did my thesis on this topic 5 years ago, and you can see it on the left-hand side there. I did a case study of the key challenges that impact the manager-employee relationship in a virtual organization. And at this time, I spent 5 years working in a 100% virtual organization. So I have very hands-on experience of working in this capacity. And I did this in my master's in work and organizational behavior. So I'm going to bring a lot of these tips into play here for when we're working from home. Now, hopefully some of us aren't falling too foul of this picture on the right-hand side where we haven't managed to get dressed and we're still in our PJs. And believe me, it happens to all of us, but psychologically, it's the worst thing we can probably do. We need to really start getting up and showing up like we would. Of course, you can wear more comfortable clothes, but it's important that we get up like as if we were starting our regular day job in the office. So I'm going to start with some practical tips, and then, as I said, hold any questions you have on this and we can have a chat about them. So really important to, as I say, get up and fuel up. And what we mean by this is getting up at the same time as you normally would and fueling up. And this is maybe doing some power yoga, it's going for your run, it's getting a coffee, whatever needs to get you started. A lot of the time at the moment, people are getting up and are getting very down in the mornings because of the whole current situation. So it's really important that we kind of get up and say a couple of positive affirmations to ourselves to say, look, I'm only going to look at a day at a time. Let's just get through this day, and getting up and fueling up as much as possible. Daily goal setting is incredibly important here. And if you're not used to setting goals, now is definitely the time to start it. So what I mean by daily goal setting is even saying to yourself, today, I'm going to do these 5 things, and either they're personal things or professional things or career things, whatever they are. It's about setting those goals every day. If we're not setting these daily goals at the moment, the days are turning into weeks, and the weeks are turning into a very long month of working from home in a very uncertain context. So by setting daily goals for yourself, it keeps you a little bit more on track. It gives you a bit more validation, and it gives you a lot more focus to say that you've done something with your day, and it keeps you on track. So we really try and do that. For certain personality types, this is going to come very natural to you because you like lists. But if you don't like lists, today is definitely the day to start. I'd also advise structuring your day as much as possible like an office day. So if you have the usual meetings, that you keep those meetings. And the word of warning here is not to spend too much time doing the Zoom and virtual meetings, because you can get very, very drained from a computer screen doing a lot of video calls. Yes, the video calls are good and recommended, but they have to be done in moderation. Checking in with yourself is vital when working from home, and at least 3 times a day it's recommended from a psychological standpoint. What I mean by checking in is just saying to yourself, how am I feeling? Am I tired? Am I, frustrated? Am I drained? Am I isolated? How am I feeling? Once you check in with yourself, and you might do it before lunchtime, you might do it, in mid-afternoon, and then in the evening time, you can put some sort of measure in place to combat that feeling. So if you're feeling very drained and tired and you're sleeping okay, that means you need possibly to taper down the interaction you're having with people, or indeed ramp it up. So you put some sort of measure in place for that. Taking breaks regularly, and that's taking a lunch break religiously and mini breaks, and forcing reminders on our phones to actually get up from the desk and having a break and do a few stretches, because maybe your work setting isn't maybe ergonomically sound and we need to have a little bit more space from the desk. Getting outside at least once a day. And Owen, I might get you to put up the first poll, if that's okay, please, about exercise. I'm really interested to see who at the moment on the call, we've got 58 people on, is actually doing daily exercise. So are you getting out for daily exercise? Perhaps you could just have a look at that poll that's come up now and click yes or no.
Yeah, the answer coming through very quickly. So we give it another 5 seconds.
No problem. I can't see.
Mainly yes, actually. No, I'll share the poll now with you
Perfect.
in
Yeah.
3 seconds.
So really interested, and let's be honest, it's anonymous. Who's actually getting out there for daily exercise? Wow, that's fantastic. So 86% of us are getting out for daily exercise and 14% aren't. So it's good to see the majority. I'd say for the 14%, it's if you're not getting out for exercise, it's really important to do something at home by way of exercise, because it's very, very good for the brain and for the psychological side of things as well. So thank you for that poll, Owen. Keep going. So less emails and more FaceTime and calls and IMs. So please don't get caught up on doing lots of emails at home. I did already say let's taper down the video calls too, but it's really important even to use instant message or quick picking up the phone call rather than doing a video call. There is a danger that people hide behind email when working from home because they feel that it's a safer construct to use rather than the video calls. The 8th tip I want to talk about is productivity tracking. We all have different productivity cycles during the day, and every single person is different. This is whether you're at home or in an office. So trying to track our day to see when you're most productive is really, really good when you're working from home. We cycle through periods of 90-minute blocks of really good productivity and heightened focus. And these blocks of high productivity are known as ultradian cycles. And it's how you know when you're having that ultradian cycle is you feel energized, you feel like you're really getting involved in a task, you're happy to get involved in a project or task, and you feel like you're being productive during that day. So the start of these cycles is where our brain is very energetic and very focused, and it's nothing to do with coffee. And it's nothing to do with exercise. It's literally when you're feeling productive. At the end of this productive cycle, you're going to feel quite tired and feel quite drained, and you tend to need a break. So sometimes people will organize their day around 90-minute blocks. Now, obviously, you have to take little breaks, of course, within that time frame. But it's really important to start tracking your day to see when you're most productive. So for me, it's usually like 11 o'clock is when I'm really productive. And then sometimes it's a little bit later in the day. And the only way I know this is from tracking my day. So a suggestion here is to maybe start tomorrow, maybe not tomorrow because it's Good Friday, maybe next week, and pick a day and say, right, I'm going to pick when I feel really energized, I'm going to pick when I feel really drained. And that's the only way to actually see when you feel most productive. Listening to music, that can sometimes help as long as it doesn't distract you. I've got 2 playlists on the go at the moment. One is for relaxing and winding down, and the other is more of a motivational boost. So if I'm feeling quite drained and I haven't had that interaction with people in a particular day, I hit 2 or 3 tracks on that and I feel much more boosted in terms of energy and mood. So if music works for you, it's a really good way when you're feeling isolated at home. Establishing expectations and boundaries with anybody else that may be in the house. This is incredibly hard if you're working from home right now with maybe kids at home and you have another partner who's working at home. So what a lot of couples are doing in that situation are looking at it on a day-to-day term about meetings that you can't negotiate, that you have to go online for them, and they're incredibly important, especially if they're external stakeholder meetings. And then they're chunking out their time to discuss what's non-negotiable, what are things that we can move. Incredibly important that you speak to your manager to see what reasonable accommodation you can put in place here if you're trying to manage childcare and your partner's work and things like that. The most important thing is that you talk to your manager. A lot of people aren't kind of maybe disclosing how stressed they are to their managers. And look, if the manager doesn't know what's going on, they can't really help you. So I'd say communication is incredibly important there. Procrastination, unfortunately, is a very big part of working from home. So we have to consciously ask ourselves, what have I haven't done that's causing me stress? Because if you're going to bed at night knowing that you still have to do a report or something that's sitting there a while, that's going to be really on your mind. And when you're working on your own at home, that procrastination can seep in a little bit more. So what is causing you stress that you haven't done? Start tackling those bigger things in the morning or when you have those ultradian productivity cycles. We're going to be talking about personality for the majority of the rest of the call because it's incredibly important when working from home. So being aware of your personality type. So Owen, you might take up that other poll, please, on the personality types. So if you don't know your personality type, you can tick unknown. If you think you're an ambivert, which is a bit of extrovert and introvert, you can tick that. And if you know you're an extrovert or you know you're an introvert, please tick that. So it's useful to see on the call what kind of personality types we have. Extroverts need interaction to be energized, whereas introverts often get the energy from themselves. Therefore, introverts will often not need as much adaptations when working from home than extroverts do. And we need to make adjustments to ensure our interaction levels are in line with our personality needs. So Owen, is that poll up or?
Let me know if you can see it. If not, I'll start it again.
Yeah, I can't.
You can.
Yep.
Grand, I'll just hold on one second.
Yep.
I'll just start it again.
I'll keep going anyway because the poll can come up if that's okay, and just for the interest of time.
No problem.
Yeah, so sending our manager or your manager an end of the week update can also be quite good. It's coming up now, and thank you very much. So do you think your personality is extrovert, introvert, ambivert, which is a bit of both, or unknown?
Interesting. It's gravitating towards what my one will be. I shall share it now.
Okay. Can't see it at the moment, but I'm sure it's coming.
It's saying, I'll call out what it is. It's 68% of people are saying ambivert, and 18 introvert, 13 extrovert. So extrovert, introvert almost equal, and ambivert taking the lion's share.
Okay, interesting. It didn't show up, but thank you for the verbal confirmation. Okay, we'll keep going. So sending your manager at the end of the week an update if you and your manager deem it appropriate sometimes helps people from working from home. But don't add this to the list if it's just a piece of work that's going to add extra stress. If you think it's important that you want your manager to know what you've been doing, that can help sometimes if you're feeling a bit of confidence issues. Oh, we got the results come up now. Lovely.
Yeah, I have to do it twice, unfortunately, so just bear with me.
Thank you. That's no problem. So setting boundaries to power down and close the virtual door of your office, really important. There's a huge psychological guilt factor when you're working from home. And sometimes that can creep in because you might not feel people know what you're doing. You're a little bit out of sight, out of mind. You're a little bit anxious about the future. You might be worried about the whole COVID-19 situation and what might happen to your job. There's loads of different fears that are going on in our heads with anxiety at the moment. So don't let that become a guilt factor thing where you have to work longer and harder. It's not the case. A lot of organizations are being very flexible at the moment. And importantly, we need to continually check in to see what's working and what's not working. If you've had a good day when you've worked from home, really check back in and go, what made that day good? If you've had a terrible day, and let's face it, we're all having bad and good days at the moment, but what was it about the day that made it bad day? Was it too much interaction? Did you feel isolated? But the only way you can make this work from home well is when you're constantly checking in and making the relevant adaptations to do that. So let's talk a bit about personality. So introverts love depth versus variety of work, and as a result it makes them a lot more able to work from home because they like to get involved in the depth of the subject matter. They prefer scheduled meetings, which is a work from home dream. They like space and reflection time, which you've got probably too much of it now, but there's loads of it there. And as a result, you're more creative in that space. Introverts don't require validation from others. And what I mean by this is, say, for example, an introvert is going to run a marathon. They'll probably run the marathon and then tell you afterwards. Whereas an extrovert is running a marathon, they're going to tell the whole world. They're going to put it all over social media. They're going to track their progress and love that validation where people go, well done, you're going to run that marathon. That's what you call validation. It's the same thing in work. You want people to go, well done, you're doing great, when you're more of an extroverted or ambiverted extrovert. Whereas introverts don't need that. They get all the validation from themselves, which therefore means they can work from home a little bit better because they already have that there. They follow a schedule and tend to be quite self-disciplined, whereas more extrovert personalities get caught up with the white noise and the chit-chat that goes on around them. They like to have that schedule and self-discipline. And they need more time to recharge between meetings. So introverts, take note here, if you're doing an awful lot of virtual calls, be mindful that you have to have that recharge space in between them. And the same goes if you're in a physical office too. You can't have back-to-back meetings when you're an introvert. You have to have that recharge space. You'll get very, very drained from that. So if you are doing an awful lot of virtual calls at home, please be mindful of that and try and schedule your day slightly better if you have the capacity to do so. And remember, you're more creative in a quieter space. So don't be surprised if you're more introverted and you feel a lot more creative at the moment. I'd say really capitalize on that because that's a huge selling point for you guys when you're at home. A couple of things for introverts to be mindful of. The social and professional isolation can be much larger for introverts because they're less likely to push themselves on virtual calls or network or self-promote like extroverts do. So just keep a check on the professional isolation here, because even though you're more introverted, you still need that interaction too. Lack of diversity of thought, that sounds a bit harsh, so let me explain that. What I mean by that is if you're in an office and you're an introvert, you're much more inclined to get comments from more extroverted, more dominant personalities, even though they're not welcome. And especially in meetings and things like that. When you're on your own, working from home as an introvert, you're less likely to reach out looking for opinions and thoughts. And as a result, if you're working on something, you might have less diversity of thought. It might be just your thoughts on something. So if you need to check in, make sure you're still checking in to get more opinions on things. Out of sight, out of mind can sometimes happen, but we're all in the same boat at the moment, so I wouldn't be overly concerned about that. And introverts, I coach a lot more of introvert personalities. They often say in meetings they're talked over or they're shouted over, or more dominant personalities will speak across them. The same thing happens on remote calls. In fact, sometimes people are more ruder on remote calls because they can cut across you easier. So just be mindful that you still need to be obviously more vocal and try and work across those dominant personalities in terms of that. Now, I'm speaking quite general, so do pardon me on this, but it's just to give you the kind of academic background on it. So let's talk a little bit about extroverts, which is me. Extroverts prefer variety in tasks and they enjoy bouncing ideas off each other. So often going from one topic another and thinking out loud. So bear in mind, if you're on this call and you're more of an introvert personality, you need to start looking at the people that you're dealing with in your team or your manager or your customers, because they might be extroverts. So this is things that they might be doing with you at the moment. So you have two hats. One is your own personality type and one is the personality type of others that you're dealing with right now. Extroverts also enjoy spur of the moment conversations and can sometimes prefer these to scheduled meetings. So they're really missing out in working from home sometimes because they don't have that sporadic, improvised nature of conversations. Extroverts are often quite fast-paced, and sometimes the solitude that comes with remote working can be a little bit self-limiting. And extroverts definitely require more validation. So extroverts in a work from home capacity really have to learn to self-validate or use social media or call your friends, things like that, to get that validation that you really crave. And they're often energized by small talking meetings, and they tend to be more creative in a busier space. So sometimes extroverts, when you have that reflection time, you're not going to be as creative as you would be when you have other people around you. Extroverts tend to feel more energized and happy being with others, and being alone for too long can make them feel a little bit unbalanced and unhappy. So that's something you really have to watch with this current COVID-19 situation, is plenty of interaction. And introverts don't need as much of that. So make sure you're balancing it out with the teams that you're working with and having that lovely contracting in teams to say, guys, what are we thinking? Do you want to do a video call every day? Is it every second day? But by making sure every personality type is accounted for here. So some adaptations then for extroverts: we need to schedule multiple social interactions every day and top up on these regularly, which in turn keeps you recharged to do the isolated tasks at your best. And play to your strengths. Extroverts are very good at networking. They're very good at self-promotion. So that can be really a good savior from an extrovert when they are working from home. Everyone should exercise every day, but extroverts in specific need it for the brain energy link. So make sure that you're definitely exercising to expel some of that energy that you would normally have in the office. Again, checking in with your energy levels will help that. One other thing about extroverts it's important to note is, due to the fast pace of extroverts, what happens is others might get stressed from jumping between one call and the next call and jumping back and forth. Extroverts tend to love this and really flourish on this. So sometimes when they're working from home, extroverts can get their energy from this specific thing, which is jumping from task to task. And remember, extroverts and more ambivert extroverts can learn to adapt and flex their personality type all of the time. So just because you are a particular personality type, you can flex, and we all are flexing at the moment to adapt to this kind of environment, especially when it comes to learning to self-validate. Ambiverts, just one very quick slide on this. It's the best of both worlds personality type, as you've tendencies from both. And around 2/3 of the population can fall into this category. And as Owen has shared, it's the same with this polling today on lunchtime. Ambiverts feed off the energy of those around them, but they also relish a quiet environment. So you're the best of both worlds. So you still should be able to adapt quite well in the work from home scenario. But it all depends on your mood. Some days ambiverts are more of an extrovert mood, some days are more of an introvert mood. So you really have to go with how you're feeling on the day, and it can be a bit of a roller coaster up and down for ambiverts. So make sure you're looking at the list of introverts and the list of things for extroverts to see what you need to do on that particular day. I have articles written on both of these that I can send to Owen to share with you after today as well, which might help if you haven't been taking any notes and things. There is one other element of personality I want to talk about that's nothing to do with extroverts or introverts. Anyone who's ever done Myers-Briggs or the MBTI, there's one, which is a personality test, there's one element called judging and perceiving. And this is the biggest source of conflict for people, especially when working from home. So a judging type person will be very, very structured. I'm like that, okay? So everything is planned, everything's organized. I love to-do lists. It's all very methodical. A person who's on the perceiving side, on the right-hand side, is like, it's grand, I've plenty of time. They're very go with the flow, very lastminute.com. No difference in performance. They'll both perform equally well, but the P-type personality or perceiving type personality will just be very more relaxed about things. If you're working with people that are both J and both P-type personalities, be mindful this can cause a bit of conflict. If you're a judging type person, and I don't like the word judging, but that's what it is, unfortunately, and you're a leader or manager, you're more prone to micromanagement by nature of your personality. So if you're a J leader or a J manager and your staff are more of the P-type people, be very mindful that when you're working from home, you can appear that you're putting a lot of pressure on them because you like updates and you like things like that. So be careful of that micromanagement element and the lack of autonomy that might be perceived from those type of people. So that's just one to be mindful of when working from home. I have two last slides and then we're going to open it to Q&A, as I'm conscious to keep in the 20-minute time frame. Minimizing professional isolation, and my thesis studied very much on this topic. So what can we do? A couple of pointers. So ensuring accessibility to everyone is key, is very, very important. So making sure that everyone knows that they can contact you. Ensuring inclusion of everyone. So if people are more quieter or more introverted, we need to make sure we're checking in on people to make sure everyone is absolutely included at this point in time. Having the right balance between video and audio calls. So like I said earlier at the start of the talk, making sure we're contracting with people and saying, how would you like to be contacted? Do you want to do a Zoom call? Do you want to keep it at emails? What's your preference? And depending on your personal circumstances, your resilience and your mindset will determine how well your coping mechanisms will be to work from home. Every single person is different. And what I'm saying to a lot of people at the moment is don't compare yourself to your colleagues, because everyone has different things going on at home. Some people are living on their own. Some people are living with 3 kids and 5 animals. Some people are living in very difficult situations with partners at the moment. There's an awful lot going on in people's houses. And I'm telling you now, everyone doesn't have it together. So if people are appearing there going, oh yeah, I'm fine, everything's great, that's not the case. So everyone has their own stuff going on, and your own resilience is incredibly important in terms of how you deal with that, but everyone is different. If there's an opportunity to do some distance learning, now is a great time to do it. There's a massive academic link between the provision of development to minimize isolation. So if you can do it some sort of online course or e-learning course at the moment, that's really going to help with isolation, as is networking. That's another thing that academically is proven. So networking, getting in touch with people within your sector, perhaps outside of your organization, this really promotes solidarity and idea generation, is helping with isolation. And now is a great time to have that virtual cup of coffee with people you've been dying to catch up with over the last couple of months. The best benefit of what's happening right now is we're slowing down. We used to be so busy running from thing to thing. Now we've got forced time where we might have that time to reach out to people that we hadn't been involved with in the past. Last slide. So resilience, a couple of tips, and I'm sure you've done things on this already. Keep reminding ourselves and others this is temporary, will pass. We're not going to go back to business as usual, but it's business as new usual. Demonstrate empathy and flexibility where we can with people. Focusing what's in our control. There's so much outside of our control right now. We can only focus day by day what is within our control. And that's why I call this talk Winning Your Day. It's all about what's today. Keeping the focus on achievable short-term goals. And that's what I'm saying, doing that 5 or 6 goals every single day. And having that we're all in this together mentality. At the moment, Ireland, I think, has really come together as a community, and organisations have really come around this too. We are all in this together, and keep going back to that safety net. And continue to share ideas and promote inclusion about how to work best from home. Some of the great ideas I'm hearing are just coming from teams having a chat, going, well, this is what I did today and it's worked very well. So lots of different ways. So I'm going to open it up now to questions. And also before I do that, Owen, there's a last poll I think there, just about how, doing a quick pulse check to see how people are feeling. Are we drained or are we more energized at the moment? So if you wouldn't mind, Owen, just pulling out that last poll up before we open it up to Q&A.
Great. Is that showing for you there, or will I start it again?
If not, you could start it again, please.
Great. Well, that's coming up. Fiona, I'll just share some of the questions that have come in.
Yes,
do you know of any social virtual groups for chats outside of work teams?
I know if you're on Facebook, there's an awful lot of social groups. It depends what kind of you're looking for. There's groups for parents, there's groups for mothers, there's groups for single people, there's groups for everything at the moment. So it really depends on what kind of social status you have or demographic or what you're really looking for. But I think Facebook seems to be the prime example, just from what I'm seeing about organizing groups. I think there's a website called Meetup as well, which they meet up based on hobbies. And I think they're doing a couple of virtual groups on that at the moment.
Great. There's another question around Any guidance on how many video calls would be the optimum and what the optimum length of they should be if people were looking at them on a daily basis?
Sure. I'm trying to say for virtual calls, they should be 30 minutes. Now, unfortunately, sometimes you have to have a longer call for specific things that you're working on. And that poll is coming up now, Owen. So
Oh,
it's
okay, sorry.
about how we're feeling now. Are we feeling energized or are we feeling drained? So if you want to populate that. So going back to the question, Owen, about the video calls. So I think 30 minutes to 40 minutes, the maximum, our attention span completely starts to go. If you're on a call for an hour, just be noted that in that last 20 minutes, people are going to start multitasking. People are going to go off making coffee, going to the bathroom. They're just gone. So if we can try to keep 20 to 30 minutes, I think introverts have a capacity for about 3 virtual meetings a day. After that, they start to get drained. So we need to try and space those meetings out. And extroverts can do as many as they really need. So it depends on personality type. So I would be saying 3 virtual meetings, possibly 4 would be a maximum in an average on a day-to-day basis. And we need to try and keep these to a half an hour. If meetings go beyond an hour, you can feel it very, very drained from it. So if you have to have longer meetings, I'd suggest having a normal break, like a comfort break that you would normally have in a regular meeting.
Great. Just one question around personality tests. So we might have a good feel whether we're extrovert or introvert or ambivert. And it's just, is there any good pointer that people could, or tests that people could take to give themselves an indication of?
Any online tests that are free wouldn't have the validity or reliability. If anyone wants to do a test with me, they can contact me and it can do through the Myers-Briggs. So to do a test, you would have to go, oh wow, we're smack in the middle for the draining. So 50% are energized, 50% are drained. So that's interesting in terms of that. Thank you for sharing that, Owen. So going back to the personality test, to do a proper personality test, you have to go through a registered personality practitioner like myself or somebody else to do it legitimately. When you get the results, therefore, they're valid and reliable. Anything that's available free online wouldn't have the validity or reliability behind it. Even you don't have to do a test. So how you know, say for your energy, extroverts, again, will get very drained or tired when they're not having interaction with people. So they have to have the energy from people. And if you think you need to get energy from people, that's how you know you're more of an extrovert. As I said, with ambiverts, your mood tends to fluctuate day by day, whether you want energy or you want to be isolated on your own. That's a bit of both. Introverts will get very tired and drained from dealing with people. So that's how you can know where you get your energy from. And again, extroverts love variety. So if you like variety things, more than likely you're going to be more ambiverted or extroverted. If you like depth of things, you're more likely to be introvert. So there's a lot you know without taking a test as well. And there is an awful lot available online to read too. And I have a couple of articles written that I'll share with Owen that might help as well.
Excellent. Just 2 final questions. First, this one could be a long answer because it's quite a smart question. And it's, will remote working be the norm post the current status, environmental benefits and cost savings for organizations?
I would think yes, definitely. And myself and Owen were talking about this before we jumped on the call. A lot of my research on my thesis was around this. And I've certainly seen in the last even 2 years, a lot more organizations have adopted this. Because of the forced situation with COVID-19 at the moment, organizations that resisted this type of work practice have been forced into it. So it proves that it can work in many spaces. I think this is definitely, in my personal opinion, going to be part of the norm. And 1 to 2 days a week is the ideal sweet spot for people working from home. That's when your productivity really soars, regardless of personality type, because you're getting away from commute times, you're getting to have that space and reflection time to do things that you want to do without loads of people around you, and you're still making it work for the company. So my answer is yes, this is definitely going to be part of the new way of working.
Great. Any particular online platforms you would recommend? I know you touched on 1 or 2.
So I think Zoom, as we're using right now, is fantastic. I personally use Zoom. I've used MS Teams, WebEx. They're all very good. They all offer different pricing structures and different functionality. And just be careful of the add-on function. So a lot of the times there's hidden add-ons in pricing, to be mindful. But they all are quite competitive together. So I would recommend a lot of them. And you need to obviously make sure you've got some sort of instant messaging thing as well. There is virtual coffee applications you can have where people randomly assign lunchtime coffee talks with people. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'll find it and send to Owen to send to you. But these are things for social interaction within organizations that have been put in play as well. And the likes of Slack and Google Hangouts are great. So I wouldn't have a preference. I think they're all fantastic. It really depends on the sector you're working in and the kind of interaction that you need.
Great. For online courses, some of the ones that you mentioned, any other online course platforms that you think would be good for people to look at?
Again, it depends on what you're looking for. And again, I think you need to go back to your organization to see if they will support that financially too, or you're paying for it yourself. So I think it largely depends on the kind of learning that you want to do. You know, you could be looking at a very short course like a day, or you could be looking at a diploma. So it really depends on what you're looking for and the kind of profession you're in. I wouldn't have one or two particular websites that I could kind of say off.
Yeah, I signed on for a Yale course in psychology, which I've yet to begin. I'm 2 weeks into it.
Well, I'm doing a CBT course, cognitive behavioral therapy. I've signed online to do that with Udemy, and they're really, really cheap, but I hear they're very good courses. But I haven't started yet, so I can't endorse it.
Great. Just there's two related questions around the introvert extrovert, and can somebody be half extrovert and half introvert? And if so, if yes, is it easier or more difficult to adapt?
So the half extrovert, half introvert is an ambivert. So that's one of the ones we were talking about. And that means you're a bit of both. And again, how you know that is because you love the interaction, but you like the quiet time. It's much more easier to adapt when you're an ambivert. And that's why it's the best of both worlds personality. You can easily dance on the extrovert side and you can easily go to the introvert side. So you're much more able to flex when you are that ambivert.
Great. And just specifically on the test, how long does the test take? Is it
So the test basically, and you can contact me via LinkedIn if you like, or my details, Owen will have them. You do an online questionnaire and then you would have a short coaching session with me so I can tell you the results and explain it to you. I've reduced all my rates by 50% in line with COVID virus as well. So I want to make sure it's accessible to a lot of people if they need support in this area. So rates are very attractive. And if you do want to come and chat with me directly, Owen can link us up, or my details are here on the last page.
Yeah. One final question that popped through, which is really interesting. What should one do if your organization does not support remote working after this period?
Well, I think you need to put a business case aside, don't you, in terms of particularly how it's actually worked. I think there's a lot more organizations going to have to try and adopt it based on the pressures that people have been under right now. So I would look, and there's so much available online as well. I would put together a small business case in terms of the benefits for you individually and the benefits for the organization of adapting it. Now, I don't think organizations are going to be a fan of pure work from home because isolation does happen. But if you're looking to do maybe 1 or 2 days from home, you've proven that you can do it. If your results have staying as they are, well, that's the business benefit. So there's nothing that can actually, I suppose, compensate for results, isn't it? So if you have the results, just as you have if you're in the office, that's all you need to focus on, and that's what you need to prove to your organization. So output and results.
Fiona, thank you very much. I know I'm standing between people and food and taking your tip number 3, I think, which was to make sure you fuel up well and take a lunch break. We might wrap up the questions now. Fiona, thank you very much. Some amazing insights, an awful lot to try compress into 20 minutes, but it's really, really appreciated. And to everybody on the call, I think there was about 68 of us, thank you very much for taking the time to attend today and to take time out of your lunch. And the video and slides and some of the resources that Fiona spoke about will be up on the ICBE website either later today or tomorrow, and you'll probably receive an email from the ICBE as well to point you at those. And without further ado, I'll let everyone go and have something to eat. But Fiona, thank you very much. Plenty for us to think about. If
anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. It's a trying time, so I'm happy to support anyone any way I can. Thank you for having me on, and keep safe and well, everybody.
Great. Thank you very much, Fiona.